Welcome back to the channel, folks. You know, unlike a lot of underrated titles I've covered in the past, The Suffering is one of those games I've always been aware of. I used to see it all the time at GameStop, sitting on the shelf alongside other PS2 titles. I'd pick it up, read the back, stare at the screenshots and think, this looks cool, but for whatever reason I never actually bought it. If I had to guess, I was probably too deep in San Andreas at the time to give it a shot. But here we are, and I've finally gotten around to playing it. Originally released in 2004 and developed by Surreal Software, The Suffering has become one of the more underrated horror games of its era. It made a strong first impression back then, but over time it was swallowed up in the shadow of bigger horror franchises like Resident Evil and Silent Hill. Still, it managed to retain a cult following, one that slowly grew over the years as gamers rediscovered the title. Unfortunately, it's in danger of fading back into obscurity, as The Suffering and its sequel were both delisted from GOG last September. So unless you bought the games before they were removed, the only way to legally play The Suffering and its sequel is tracking down a used physical copy for PS2 or Xbox. Of course, you could always pirate it, but you wouldn't do that, right? You wouldn't download a car, would you? Still, it's a shame it's not as easily accessible as it was, because this game does a lot right. Its prison setting is pretty unique. Sure, lots of games had featured a prison level, but The Suffering is one of the few that build the entire game around that environment, and it manages to find a perfect balance between action and horror. I was caught off guard by just how tense and unsettling The Suffering can be. There's a constant atmosphere of dread that hangs over everything, and while you're armed to the teeth most of the time, you never really feel safe. The Suffering might not play like Silent Hill or Resident Evil, but it knows how to get under your skin all the same. So, let's get into it. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, comment down below with your thoughts, and if you're new to the channel, thanks for subscribing.
How many times have I done this, and I still hate it?
I swear, Abbott's full enough already.
At least when you escort an inmate to death row, you know he's scheduled to get what he deserves.
Ernesto, you can really be a jackass, you know that?
But you hear what this one did?
I don't want to know, and you know when
He beat his ex-wife to a bloody pulp. Killed her with his fists.
Look, I said I didn't...
Then he drowned one son in the tub and threw the other out a window. Don't ask me to cry for him.
The game opens with our lead, Torque, arriving at Abbott State Penitentiary, a crumbling, isolated prison facility on Carnate Island. Oh man, that name, Torque. I'm not 100% sure if that's his real name or an alias, but every time I hear it, I just think of that Fast and Furious biker clone movie of the same name. Looking at Torque and his mutton chops, Sleepy is probably a better name. You know, because
everyone's saying the body of Sleepy, he like the Mexican Wolverine.
Given the death penalty for allegedly killing his family, it's not surprising the guards and other inmates both fear Torque and are disgusted by his actions. Unlike what you'd expect, the game deliberately keeps it ambiguous if our lead is guilty of his crimes. Torque himself isn't even sure, and doesn't plead his innocence either. He's a man of few words. Well, more like no words. He's a silent protagonist. Torque isn't a blank slate like a player-created character though. While mostly stoic, his body language and breathing clue you in on his current state of mind. Also, The Suffering makes it clear, regardless of whether he's innocent or not of killing his family, Torque isn't a good person. Through documents and NPC dialogue you'll stumble upon, there was always a dark side to him. He was already a criminal with a record way before his current incarceration, and his wife Carmen planned to divorce him when she found out she was pregnant with their second son. So he's not a saint at the beginning of the game. Still, because Torque never confirms or denies all the things he's allegedly done, you're not really sure if he's someone we should root for, or a monster who deserves to be punished. It keeps his backstory a mystery, and it leaves it up to players to shape the kind of person he is, though I'll circle back to that later. After being processed into the prison, Torque is brought to his new cell. The Suffering subverts your expectations again, as despite his new cellmates being colorful characters with varying opinions on Torque and what he's done, making you think they might serve as his friends / supporting cast, all of them are immediately killed after being introduced.
I was just asking the man a question, Goose. Whoa!
What the fuck is this shit?
It's an earthquake! What the hell's going on?
The interns.
CO, you gotta let us out! We're still humans, man! The whole fucking place is coming down!
Sweet Jesus, what the hell was that?
Slick, you okay, man?
Is the prison collapsing? Are we sinking into the ocean? CO! CO! What the hell is going on?
Slick, what in the fuck just happened? Slick! Slick! Goose, you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. And it wasn't me. If that's what you're thinking, I didn't touch that.
What was that? Goose? For fuck's sake, what's going on? That was close. I thought we were done for. We gotta get out of this shit can before it collapses. Shit. There's something in here. It's in here! Help me! No!
Freed from his cell and all his potential new buddies now dead, Torque is on his own to figure out what the hell is going on. Yanking a shank out of a dead cellmate, he'll start exploring the prison for answers. Things are quiet at first. All he finds are blood and bodies. Anyone Torque bumps into who is still breathing is almost immediately killed by something. The situation is tense. Despite having a shank to protect yourself, whatever is out there cut through armed guards with guns like nothing. It feels like the odds are against you. And if you're put in a situation to fight, you probably won't last long. So when you're finally forced to fight one of these monsters, you'd probably expect a tough fight, but since this is a tutorial, it really isn't. The weird demon with blades for limbs is called the Slayer, part of a group of monsters called malefactors. Malefactors are evil entities that embody the different types of executions carried out at Abbott Penitentiary and Carnet Island as a whole. Slayers embody deaths by decapitation, as shown in their design with their sharp-bladed limbs and the fact their heads aren't actually attached to their bodies. Despite being the basic and most common enemy type, Slayers are more dangerous than you'd expect. They're fast, can climb up ceilings, and drop down to ambush you. Slayers can block your attacks and use a corkscrew attack to close the distance while damaging you. The first time you fight one with just a shiv is deceptive, as well it goes down fast enough. Future encounters show it's a lot more durable than you'd expect, but I'll circle back to that in just a bit when I discuss the combat. After dispatching the Slayer, a security guard comes rushing out and holds Torque at gunpoint, though he stands down when he realizes it's safer to move in numbers to fight against these monsters in the prison, even if he has to team up with a death row inmate. Two voices then start talking to Torque. The first is his wife Carmen, who pleads with Torque to trust the guard, while the other is a demonic one pushing him to kill the guard and take his gun. This is the Suffering's take on a morality system, which can affect how some gameplay sections play out, occasionally rewarding you with some extra ammo or health, while also determining which ending you get. It's not very deep, and there's no real moral ambiguity in what's the right choice. Have Torque do good enough by helping the people he encounters, get the good ending. Do enough bad things, get the bad ending. Do nothing and ignore people instead of helping or killing them, get the neutral ending. Pretty straightforward, but making the obvious good choice doesn't necessarily mean it'll be easy to carry out. Doing the right thing and helping an NPC almost always leads into an escort mission, where you need to keep them alive until you reach the point where they'll go off on their own. While most of them aren't completely helpless, in fact, most usually have some kind of firearm on them, so they're somewhat useful in combat, but their AI is very stupid. You can't issue them commands, they can hurt you, and it's extremely easy to accidentally kill them yourself. Worst of all, there's a few sections where the amount of enemies becomes so overwhelming, it's honestly better just to run past them than waste time fighting. But unfortunately, that's not an option if an NPC is with you, as they'll try and fight everything around them. Most of these escort sections aren't too long, and you can save scum to avoid losing too much progress if an NPC does die too early. But Christ, the Suffering really makes you second guess if it's worth being a good guy. Teaming up with the security guard, he sends Torque to find a flashlight before they head down into the floor below, and they're going to need it, because this game gets dark. Depending on YouTube's compression and what you're watching this video on, it's hard to properly convey how dark this game can get. Without a good source of light, you can barely see anything around you, making it easy for enemies to sneak up on you. Your flashlight isn't infinite use either, so you have to collect batteries to keep it powered. Though you're not really pushed to conserve your flashlight, at least not on the normal difficulty. Batteries are everywhere. A lot of areas are lit well enough where the flashlight is unnecessary, and later on flares can be used to light up areas instead. Still, the darkness combined with the Suffering's excellent sound design, and the atmosphere turns downright paranoid. The game is never truly silent, unless you manually turn it off. There's always something in the background. The wind howling through the cracks in the wall, distant metal scraping, broken machinery groaning to life. It all keeps your nerves on edge, even when nothing is actually happening. During tense sections, you'll hear Torque's heavy breathing and heartbeat too. And a good chunk of the time, the silence isn't interrupted by a malefactor attacking you. It's usually a hallucination dropping out of nowhere. While most of the time they're just musical stings and a quick flash of a monster, basically a jump scare, other times the hallucinations are of Torque's family, sometimes condemning his actions, other times forgiving him, and occasionally memories of their time together before they died. Again, genuinely creepy, and it's probably the first horror game in a long time that had me anxious through a good chunk of the runtime. Briefly returning to the story, our team up with that prison guard is short-lived. After a fight with some stalkers, our new friend dies from electrocution when entering the wrong room. Well, RIP that guy. You were an asshole. Thanks for the gun though, which makes now a good time to knock out the discussion on combat. Combat in The Suffering is simple, but it works. There aren't any deep systems or fancy mechanics. Just old school run and gun action with a horror twist. The only real advanced move you get is a dodge roll, and while it's actually pretty useful, I mostly ignored it during my playthrough. You can also switch between third person and first person views at any time. First person is great for lining up shots, while third person gives you better awareness, especially when enemies are swarming from all sides. Both perspectives feel solid, though the game doesn't really require you to switch between them. Early on, you're scraping by with just a shiv. Melee works in a pinch, but it's not super effective. Though the fire axe you get later actually puts in some work against a specific enemy. Once firearms enter the picture, melee becomes more of a backup plan. Shooting is where it's at, and the game gives you a decent arsenal to play with. Revolvers, dual pistols, shotguns, Tommy guns, Molotovs, grenades. It's not the deepest loadout, but everything feels punchy and satisfying to use. You also have 2 secret weapons you can use. The first is the Gonzo gun, which is a chicken that fires eggs that does some pretty decent damage. The second, and the one you have to build over the course of the game, is the flamethrower. You need a flare, a gas canister, and a bicycle pump in order to put it together. Unfortunately, the flamethrower is kinda underwhelming, and really you're better off using anything else. There's ammo everywhere for your various weapons, so you never really have to hold back or save your big guns for boss fights. Still, even when you're fully stocked, you never feel overpowered. Some fights throw so many enemies at you that you either burn through all your ammo, or just run for it. On top of that, malefactors can be pretty tanky, especially some of the stronger variants. It's not uncommon to pump several shotgun blasts into one before they go down. While the combat gets the job done, I do have a couple gripes. Explosives and other throwables can hurt torque, and any companions you're with. It wouldn't be a big deal if the blast radius wasn't so inconsistent, but it can be tough to find a safe spot to toss something without catching yourself or your escort in the crossfire. That said, the same friendly fire rule applies to enemies. So, if you play it smart, you can get malefactors to damage or even kill each other, which is always satisfying to pull off. Returning to the story, a malfunctioning electric chair seems to be the cause of the guard's death. Except, as I found out really quickly, there wasn't any power running through the chair until Torque turns it on. Welp, that's ominous. Whatever or whoever that was, you can also briefly spot them while checking the security monitor nearby. Traveling through the prison, we'll reach another execution room and find a guard locked inside a gas chamber. A voice in Torque's head, different from the other voice in his head I should point out, urges him to make the guard suffer and to push the yellow button to gas him. Since I'm a true believer of due process, I decided not to execute him without a fair trial. Unfortunately, the gas chamber turns on and the guard starts dying anyways. Despite my best efforts, I couldn't find a way to free him. RIP, buddy. I tried. Double unfortunately, the chamber door opens and Torque is now locked in the same room to share the guard's fate. Spotting a bigger variant of the stalker on the opposite side of the bulletproof wall, I take a few pot shots at him to antagonize him into breaking through and creating an escape path. Escaping down into the basement takes us into the next chapter, and introduces the Suffering's 3 major antagonists. Well, sort of.
Death is our stock and trade here at Abbott, the final solution. I am one of the few who will admit that. First it giveth, and it taketh away.
I've been here a long time. I don't understand much about this place, but I know your being here ain't no coincidence.
Well, 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 look what we have here. How long I have been waiting to encounter such a fascinating specimen. My understanding is you've had periodic blackouts since, when was it? Ah, yes, early adolescence. Ever wonder what happens during those blackouts? Would you say you have visions of bloodshed? Yes, surely there is bloodshed.
The ghostly trio here are tied to Abbott Penitentiary's dark history, and who each of them are is slowly revealed over the course of the game through NPC dialogue and documents. But for the sake of time and making things easier, I'll introduce them all now. First up on the list is Slimer here. Hermes T. Height was the former executioner at Abbott State Penitentiary. This guy was infamous for his love of the gas chamber. He insisted on using it for most of the executions he carried out, and he clearly enjoyed his job a little too much, to the point he wanted to experience it himself, so he killed himself using the gas chamber. Since then, his ghost has haunted the place, with so many sightings from guards and prisoners alike. Everyone treats it as fact that his ghost is hanging around, as opposed to treating it as superstition. Our next ghostly freak is Electro, aka Horace P. Gage. Horace was originally sent to Carnet Island on an assault charge, just one of many inmates doing time at Abbott, but the island got to him. Over time, he became consumed by paranoia, convinced something bad would happen to his wife while he was locked up and couldn't protect her. After persuading the guards to allow a conjugal visit, he ended up murdering her in what he called a crime of passion, believing death was the only way to truly keep her safe. He was then sentenced to the electric chair, and now his spirit is trapped in a loop, forced to relive that execution over and over again. Finally, the Phantom of the Opera here is Dr. Killjoy, an infamous psychiatrist working at Carnet Asylum in the early 1900s. He specialized in treating severe mental illnesses like schizophrenia, paranoia, and dissociative disorders, but his so-called treatments were more like torture. We're talking electroshock therapy, lobotomies, and all kinds of archaic procedures that often left patients worse off, if not dead. Despite all that, there's this weird, lingering belief that he genuinely thought he was helping people. His methods were horrific, but come from a twisted desire to actually help his patients. Killjoy eventually vanished under mysterious circumstances, but his legacy never left the island. Now his ghost haunts the asylum, appearing through old film projectors, grainy black and white footage spliced with unsettling monologues. He takes a quick interest in Torque, claiming he wants to cure him, though it's never really clear if he's trying to help or just feeding off Torque's trauma. The Good Doctor takes the stage as our main antagonist for the first half of the game, but the ghostly trio here aren't responsible for what's happening on the island. They're just byproducts of something much bigger. The real cause of the strange things happening on the island seems to be a mix of its brutal history, and strangely, Torque's arrival. Carnet has always been a place soaked in blood, from Puritan witch trials to war camps, failed asylums, and violent prison executions. The island has seen centuries of cruelty and death. Over time, that pain seems to have stained the place, turning it into a breeding ground for evil. People who come here, especially those already on the edge, tend to snap, just like Horace did. So when Torque shows up, something about him, some darkness inside him, acts like a spark, causing the earthquake at the beginning of the game and unleashing the malefactors. Killjoy's interest in Torque is partially motivated in discovering and understanding that darkness, leading us into another gameplay mechanic, the insanity meter. Torque's constant blackouts are a symptom of the darkness inside him. Killjoy wants him to take control of it in order to free the monster inside himself. After killing enough enemies, you'll fill up the insanity meter, and once it's full, you can turn into a hulking monster. Torque's monster form decimates pretty much every malefactor in only a couple hits, but it's not completely unstoppable. You still take damage in this form, arguably more since you're a bigger target, and your HP will instantly drain if the insanity meter runs out before you transform back to normal. Also, overusing the form will negatively impact Torque's morality too. Still, I think it's a fun gameplay addition. Keeps it from being too repetitive and gives you some options to cut down the larger encounters. Interestingly though, Torque probably isn't actually transforming into a monster. Outside of the ghostly trio, anyone you transform in front of doesn't notice it happening. Only Clem, the guy who writes journal entries about the monsters you fight, acknowledges it, but only that he saw Torque turn into the creature in a dream. And in real life, he notes that sometimes Torque would become more bloodthirsty and brutal during encounters. So our boy going beast mode is supposed to be metaphorical, and not literal. Maybe. It gets kinda confusing later on. After our ghost pals go their separate ways, we're left to our own devices moving through the prison's basement, until eventually we encounter a blindfolded guard tied to a stake, and the next malefactor, the Marksman.
Where the fuck are you? What's taking so long? Do it. Fucking do it! Just fucking kill me!
The Marksman is one of the more striking malefactors in the Suffering. and if it wasn't obvious by how it killed the guard, it represents execution by firing squad. These things are built like tanks, all muscle and decay, with bullet holes riddling their rotten skin. They lumber around, blindfolded, but still track you with ease. On their backs is a grotesque rig made of rifles mounted to a fleshy, rotating turret, firing in bursts like a walking war crime. Bayonets stick out of their shoulders, and they wear what's left of old military gear, green pants, boots, gloves, like some mangled echo of a soldier. According to Clem's journal, they likely stem from Carnet's days as a World War II POW camp. He even mentions a rogue colonel who offed himself before a court-martial, suggesting that maybe the marksmen aren't just firing squads, but the condemned too. Executioners and victims fused into one monstrous form. I wasn't sure where was a good time to bring it up, but I've got to say, I really love the design of the malefactors in this game. They don't feel like generic monsters that could be from any horror game. There's a ton of thought put into making sure each one visually reflects the execution method it's based on. The devs at Surreal Software teamed up with Stan Winston Studios to bring these monsters to life. And yeah, that's the Stan Winston. His team worked on creature effects for Aliens, Terminator 2, Jurassic Park, and others. And it definitely shows. These things look and feel like they came straight out of a big budget horror movie. Honestly, it's a bummer The Suffering wasn't a bigger franchise, because it's just perfect for the big screen. Returning to the marksman, despite its intimidating size, it doesn't take much to put him down since it's slow. So the smaller, technically weaker malefactors end up feeling like a much bigger threat during encounters. Traveling through the basement, which as it turns out is actually the remains of a World War II bunker that the penitentiary was built on, we'll stumble upon a scrapbook made by Consuela Alvarez, the wife of one of the CEOs, where Clem's journal gives us an idea on who the ghosts and malefactors are. Consuela's book gives us the history about the points of interest on Carnet Island. And while she doesn't appear until the sequel, she does narrate each of these little snippets, explaining what I said before about how every awful thing ever took place on Carnet Island. After escaping the basement and surfacing on the other side of the prison, Torque stumbles across one of Dr. Killjoy's creepy little presentations, a recorded or maybe live demonstration on how to properly administer a lethal injection. Riveting stuff. Not long after, we run into another inmate named Dallas, who recognizes Torque from a different prison they were both locked up in. Just like with the guard from before, you've got to choose whether to help him or leave him behind. And good God, this one's a brutal escort mission. You're stuck protecting him through an entire chapter, and while that wouldn't be so bad on its own, it goes on forever. And this is also when the game started crashing on me constantly. I couldn't figure out why either. It's a known issue with the PC version, and while I had the unofficial patch installed, supposedly the way to fix it, it didn't seem to help. The crashes were inconsistent too. Sometimes I'd go hours without a problem, then it'd start acting up again in the next chapter. I looked into it, couldn't find a solid answer, and by the time I was ready to throw in the towel, I was already too deep into the game to bother reinstalling everything and starting over. So I just grit my teeth and save scum like crazy during my playthrough, to avoid losing too much progress from a crash. I won't lie, I did get extremely frustrated a few times because of the crashes, and would switch to Dead Rising to chill out before coming back to The Suffering, hoping if this game ever comes back through like GOG's preservation project, they iron out all the remaining bugs. Torque and Dallas will briefly run outside before entering another part of the prison. On the monitor, we'll spot the warden of the prison, Warden Hargrave, executing some of the inmates. Already a spiteful asshole before all hell broke loose, Hargrave rustled up several of his corrections officers and convinced them to start killing inmates indiscriminately, believing it's their evil that brought about all the monsters running around. Before we deal with them though, we briefly see something attack and kill a stalker. Immediately afterwards, we're introduced to the next malefactor, the Mainliner.
Man, what is this shit on the floor? Looks like blood, but it's like it's breathing or something.
The Mainliner, this gross little goblin, represents lethal injection, making it the most modern form of execution reflected in the game. It's small, sickly looking, and covered in glowing green syringes, some jammed into its back, other replacing its eyes. With a twisted, uneven body and missing limbs, it slithers across the ground like it's in constant pain. In combat, it hurls syringes from a distance, and can leap onto Torque to inject him directly, turning the screen all sickly green. They don't have much health, but they're dangerous in groups, especially since their needles can knock Torque out of his monster form. And when they die, they melt into a pool of acidic goo, forcing you to keep moving and watch your footing while still dealing with any stragglers. Probably the malefactor I hate the most, as they'll disappear and reappear if you hurt them but don't finish them off, forcing you to chase them around the room. Also, the game loves throwing you into multiple encounters with waves of these goblin junkies, to the point I thought they were infinite spawning on some occasions. I don't know if it's a glitch, or if there's some hidden mechanic I'm missing, but mainliners can be weirdly tanky. Sometimes they'll drop after a couple of revolver shots, other times it takes a full cylinder to bring one down. Same with the shotgun. Occasionally it's 1 or 2 shells, but then out of nowhere it takes 4 or 5. Maybe some of them have more health, or maybe stronger variants are mixed in without much visual difference, but for whatever reason, it makes fighting them feel unpredictable. I never felt like I had a consistent way to put them down fast, and that got annoying real quick, especially in tight spaces where you can't afford to mess around. After clearing out the mainliners and helping a fellow inmate by locking his cell to hopefully protect him from malefactors, we've got a couple ways to proceed. One is through a shower room, where an insane amount of mainliners will spawn, leading to a corridor blocked by flames, which you can put out by shooting a fire extinguisher. Or you can go down a different hallway to find a door blocked by electrified water, which you can safely pass by shooting the fuse box nearby to turn off the power. I'll get more into it later, but I like how the Suffering's environmental puzzles lean more towards realism and not video game logic. Back outside, we'll find our way through the prison yard and fight a trio of inmates who got a beef with Dallas. After moving through the prison's library and infirmary, which I did several times because of the crashing, Torque and Dallas find a couple of inmates strung up. They beg to be freed before Warden Hargraves shows up, but unfortunately, we weren't fast enough to save him.
The time has come to wash the scum from the earth. This is my Armageddon. Lock it down.
Cue a surprisingly easy boss fight. Hargraves starts off on a minigun and is backed up by a dozen COs, but honestly, they go down like chumps. I cleared most of them out before I even transformed. Not long after, we part ways with Dallas, helping him escape to freedom while Torque stays behind to figure out what the hell is going on. Well, kind of. The exit gets conveniently blocked right after Dallas leaves, so we've got to find another way out. And it sucks for Torque, because the next section in the prison yard is pure nonsense. It feels like you're stuck in an endless wave of malefactors. Even with all the ammo, explosives, and a couple of miniguns lying around, they just don't stop coming. I don't know if I missed something obvious I was supposed to blow up or trigger, but after a few tries I said fuck it, and just ran past everything. After that, we make it into the west cell block, past the hanging handiwork of our next malefactor, and get a quick phone call from the ghost of Torque's dead wife. Then Dr. Killjoy locks us in a burning room to test if Torque can puzzle his way out before roasting alive. Like I mentioned earlier, I really dig how the Suffering handles puzzles. They actually make sense, don't rely on weird keys or magic items, and the game doesn't hold your hand or shove the solution in your face. In this case, you smash open some crates to find a valve that activates the sprinklers, but they only put out part of the fire. The flames blocking the exit don't go out because the pipe overhead is busted. There's no second valve or repair option, so what do? If you pay attention, you'll notice the sprinkler water drains into a grate in the floor. Block that drain with a nearby vending machine, and the water starts to flood the room, eventually spilling over the flames and clearing the exit. It's smart, logical, and rewards players who take the time to observe their surroundings. No annoying NPCs yelling hints, no yellow paint, just solid old school puzzle design. That said, I still had to look it up because I'm an idiot. But after that, I definitely started paying closer attention to future puzzles. Not long after, we're introduced to the next malefactor, the Nooseman. The Nooseman is probably the most underwhelming of the malefactors. It's basically a skinned upper torso hanging from a long rope, swinging through the air and flailing at you with its arms. Its head is either covered by a sack or just missing any real facial features. According to the lore, these things represent correctional officers who were lynched by inmates after they left fellow prisoners to die in a mining accident. The bodies were supposedly skinned and mutilated, which tracks with how grotesque these things look. That said, they feel very boring design-wise compared to the other malefactors. As an enemy, they're not all too special either. They're just like a dangling ambush enemy type, not all that different from a Barnacle from Half-Life or a Deku Baba from The Legend of Zelda. They show up so little compared to the other malefactors, I kind of forgot they existed for most of my playthrough. Oh well, you can't knock it out of the park with all your monster types, right? After traveling up to the prison's roof and down into the guardhouse, Torque stumbles on a correction officer terrified and cowering in a corner. Like, I get it. Anyone would start to lose it watching these monsters tear through everything in sight, but this guy flat out admits he's not cut out for this job. And never fit in with the more cutthroat guards either. So, how did he even get hired? The inmates would have eaten him alive. He would have gotten shanked on day one. Maybe they stuck him in a guard tower or kept him busy in the cafeteria or something. I know the qualifications for becoming a prison guard aren't exactly all that high. Anywho, he says our only hope of getting out of this nightmare is to reach the radio building and call for help. It's a shorter sequence compared to escorting Dallas, but this guy's a little trickier to keep alive. There are way more malefactors to deal with along the way, though thankfully there are spotlights that instantly kill stalkers. The real problem is all the munitions lying around. It's way too easy to blow him, or yourself up, if Torque or a stray shot from a marksman hits something explosive. When we finally reach the radio building, we find out we can't call for help. There's some kind of interference. The guard figures it's coming from a radio the other COs left behind at the asylum, and asks Torque to check it out while he holds down the fort. Sure, no problem. Just, lock the door behind me. I'd hate to come back and find you dead after all that effort. On the way to the asylum, we pass through the prison cemetery and stumble across the graves of Horace and Hermes. There's also a quick vision of Torque's family, lamenting how he couldn't protect them.
He abandoned us.
Why didn't Daddy save us?
So many mistakes. It isn't fair.
Why couldn't we live forever?
It hurts so much. Dad was never there.
The bad man caught us.
This was your life, T. How did you let it get away?
It clearly hits him hard. His model starts breathing heavily, like he's having a panic attack. After that, we cut through the quarry and get introduced to another malefactor, the Burrower. The Burrower might be one of the nastiest enemies in the game, both in design and how it fights. Representing those who are buried alive on the island, it looks like a human body stuffed into a worn-out gunny sack, wrapped tight with leather straps, and dragged through hell. Its head is locked in some kind of metal cage, and long steel chains tipped with hooks whip out from its body like it's trying to drag you down with it. These things burst out of the ground without warning, then vanish just as quickly, making them tricky to take out. Worse, they tend to home in on any NPCs you're escorting to, making already frustrating escort sections even worse. Making our way through the quarry will help a fellow inmate escape to safety, and near the end encounter a pair of creepy ghost girls. They tell Torque he's not a bad guy, before casting a fire to block his way out. Oh no, how will I possibly get past those flames? Oh, I know. What if I did this? Come on, game. Try a little harder, would ya? After escaping the quarry, Torque finally reaches the asylum, and we're reunited with Dr. Killjoy. I gotta be honest, I had this guy pegged completely wrong. He's still a horrible monster of a human being, don't get me wrong. We'll stumble upon what he did to some COs and former asylum patients, including one guy who was such a danger to himself, Killjoy had all his limbs amputated, and tossed the guy in a padded cell. Christ. But where I initially assumed Dr. Killjoy was trying to manipulate Torque and get him to give in to the monster inside himself, it turns out it's actually been the opposite. He does want to genuinely cure Torque, though not through therapy or medication to work out his anger issues, but with some magical machine that shoots out purple energy. Well, okay then. After finding, powering up, and lowering said machine down into the asylum, we'll head back down to confront Dr. Killjoy in a boss battle, ?
At last, you have made it to the climax of this fine performance. Let me introduce our newest player. This fascinating specimen is a creature of purest strength and rage, whose presence here must prove quite a conundrum to you. His resemblance to these other soulless beasts cannot be denied, but he is altogether harder to truly understand. But with the capabilities of my experimental device, I can bring about a rebirth of the spirit, a awakening of the soul. And thus, we can shed light on this most unique situation. Why not come inside, and I shall show you?
He's not technically fighting you, he just shows off his rebirth power, and uses it to animate some stalkers in the room who do want to kill Torque. Really, it's more of a puzzle fight, where you gotta figure out how to stop Killjoy so you can stop casting Revive. Since bullets can't kill ghosts, you have to destroy the 4 projectors maintaining his form, the last of which is in a bulletproof case. So you have to destroy the fuse box powering it instead. It's a fairly easy and straightforward encounter. But again, I dig that it's more of a puzzle than just a shoot it until it's dead boss fight. After the battle is over, Torque will escape the asylum after using the rebirth power on his monster self, which frees him of his anger, I think? It makes a lot more sense at the end of the game. With the interference taken care of, it's time to head back to the radio building. Leaving the asylum, there's no sight of Torque's doppelganger. Instead, we find the burning corpses of an unknown malefactor variant. Crossing the river and nearing the sea, we find the guy responsible for killing them. It's Clem. No, not her. The old guy writing the journal entries about the malefactors. I thought he was just a guy who existed in the lore. I didn't think he was someone we'd actually meet. Old Clem is trying to get off the island by boat. Unfortunately, he hasn't been able to set sail due to our next malefactor, the Fester. These big bloated monsters represent the slave traders who crashed a slave ship on Carnet's shores over a century ago. According to the lore, instead of freeing their slaves when they crashed the ship, they left them to die and be eaten by rats. In death, the Festers are forced to share the same suffering. Their bloated bodies packed with writhing rats that burst from their flesh mid-fight. These things are gray, massive, lumber around, and kinda remind me of the abominations from World of Warcraft now that I think about it. They're the most durable of the malefactors, as they're immune to everything except Molotovs, explosives, and for some reason, the fire axe, which makes them extremely frustrating to fight. Doubly so because even after killing one, its rats will burst out to attack you. Festers make this whole section a serious chore, as they spawn infinitely, and you need to destroy their source so Clem can set sail. He'd offer to bring Torque along, but his crappy little boat only has room for one, and wouldn't support his weight. Also, he booby-trapped it to blow if we try to be cute and kill him for it. Well played, old man. Well played. The source of the Festers is coming from the hull of the slave ship, this thing with barrels which I destroy, I think? Unfortunately, I took too long to do it, and didn't realize Clem got killed. I also couldn't reload from a checkpoint as I saved after he died. So, whoops. R.I.P. Clem. Great job writing those journal entries. Fast forwarding through this next section, Torque will travel through the prison sewer system, back into the basement, and return to the electric chair room from earlier to reunite with Horace.
Oh no. It's back. It's starting again. It never stops. It just keeps burning. It won't let me go.
Cue a boss battle. Though we're not fighting Horace, but the evil of the prison that keeps him bound and suffering in agony, I think. It's a straightforward if awkward fight. Torque just needs to hop over the waves of electricity coming from the electric chair. After a few waves, one of the fuse boxes around the room loses their force field, and you can destroy it. Then you'll repeat the process a few more times while also avoiding dangling electric cables and the occasional bolt of purple energy. Once all fuse boxes are destroyed, walk over to the generator to switch it off, and Horace can finally rest in peace. Skipping ahead to when Torque reaches the radio room, the guard we left in there unfortunately died too. God damn it, I told you to lock the door. Luckily, he did manage to get that distress signal out, and the Coast Guard radios back they'll send out a rescue vessel. Only problem is they can't navigate the dense fog around the island until the light from the lighthouse is back on, so no prizes for guessing where we're heading next. First, Torque will break out of prison again, which he accomplishes by destroying the blocks holding the bus in place, causing it to fall down a hill and through the prison gates. Huh, that seemed a little too easy. Uh-oh, here comes trouble. Oh, never mind. After a brief reunion with Hermes where he warns Torque escaping the island isn't so simple, we'll start our trek to the lighthouse. First through some caves, then over some bluffs where that crazy World War II colonel executed some suspected traitors, past the crash site of a Nazi spy plane, where you can find the gas can for the flamethrower, and finally into another set of caves. Along the way, I teamed up with a fellow inmate who was trying to blow me up for a while, before he realized I wasn't a monster or a CO. I don't actually know his name, and I don't think he introduces himself, but I'm gonna call him 8-Ball. Torque and 8-Ball escape the caverns and reach a bunker beneath the lighthouse. Then 8-Ball dies.
I think the dope's coming back.
Breathe deep.
That smell! What in the fuck's going on?
That always feels good. He needed to go. He wasn't interesting enough. Not like you. You understand how it feels.
They needed someone professional to pull the switch. A lot of eager sadists applied, but I was the only one who took the work seriously. So seriously, I wanted to taste the gas myself. That's what carnate does. It brings out the killer inside. It's the perfect place for you and me.
Hermes' voice actor does some amazing work, because good God, he makes me feel uncomfortable. Not in a he's going to kill me kind of way, more like he came up behind me to rub my shoulders and sniff my neck, like some really creepy shit is about to go down. And then he'll murder me afterwards. Cue a boss battle. Hermes begins flooding the room with poisonous gas, and being an intangible ghost, we don't have anything in our arsenal that can hurt him. It's another puzzle fight. We first have to turn off the valves in the room to stop the pipes from spewing gas. Next we have to cover every vent that also spews gas using whatever we can in the room, like crates, vent covers, and 8-Ball's corpse. This leaves only one vent in the room that Hermes can flow out of, which is conveniently right in front of the furnace. Turn the valve on the pipe next to the grate to blow him into the furnace. Quickly shut the furnace door, and bye-bye Hermes. With the last of the ghostly trio taken care of, Torque ascends the bunker and finally reaches the lighthouse. Unfortunately, it's without power, and before we can get it turned on, Torque runs into the final malefactor, the Inferno.
You're the one, aren't you? We've been playing. You're the one, aren't you? You're the one I saw in the woods. How did it get this far? Who are all these strange people?
The Inferno appear first as innocent young girls in tattered white Puritan dresses, kind of like the two from the quarry, before they transform into burning, shrieking nightmares, with charred skin and flaming gowns. According to Clem, they're likely tied to the 3 girls who sparked the witch trials on Carnet back in the 1600s, condemning innocent people to burn. Now they're cursed to relive the fire they once caused. They float around fast while flames trail behind them, which makes them a pain to fight as they can be hard to hit. You'll get brief moments when they stay in place, but they'll hit you with a small burst of fire if you get too close. Even when you manage to bring one down, it turns to ash, and if you don't destroy the pile, it'll rise again and come right back at you. Luckily, you'll have some optional help to take care of them, in the form of Ernesto. You know, the prison guard from all the way at the beginning of the game, who processed Torque when he arrived at Abbott. He's managed to survive this entire time, and he's amazingly accurate with his Tommy gun. Ernesto isn't keen on working with someone who allegedly murdered his own wife and children, but he's desperately trying to reach his own family, so he's willing to take any help he can get. By this point in the game, if you've mostly been a model prisoner, you can still get the good ending even if you kill or ignore Ernesto. But I made the very bad decision to keep him alive until the point where he finally leaves. And it made the last 2 chapters a nightmare. First off, the crashing was worse than ever, and second, even though Ernesto holds his own in combat, the amount of malefactors coming at you is just overwhelming. Like some of the earlier encounters, I'm pretty convinced the game expects you to just run for it instead of fighting everything. But that's impossible with Ernesto around. He stops to fight every single thing, and enemies like the Burrowers seem to go after him first. Yeah, I know I brought this on myself, but man, it would have been nice to have some control over NPC behavior. Still, with a whole lot of save scumming and reloads, I finally made it to the generators, got the power back on, and returned to the lighthouse to activate the beacon for our rescue. In the final chapter, Torque and Ernesto make their way to the docks to meet the rescue boat, but halfway there, the road collapses, and there's no way across. That's when Hermes shows up again. I guess we didn't kill him at that bunker. Though I guess as a ghost, he technically is already dead? Using his ghost powers, he summons a bus out of nowhere, crashes it, and it conveniently forms a bridge. Alright, not quite what I expected, but hey, it works. After that, Torque and Ernesto get separated by a fire. Ernesto, who's finally started to see the good in Torque, wishes him luck and tells him to head for the docks alone. He's still got his family to find. After parting ways with them, Torque finally reaches the docks. But of course, things don't go smoothly. Dr. Killjoy shows up one last time, offering Torque a chance to purge the darkness inside him once and for all.
Torque, my diagnosis is complete. Your cure is at hand. You might think my methods a bit unorthodox, but my results will speak for themselves. Ahead you will encounter something altogether unlike what you've seen before. But I have something that can help you. A device that can cure you, put your demons to rest. But Only if it is sufficiently powered, and only if you are in your more, shall we say, primal form. Use this correctly, and you cannot help but be cured. You do want to be cured, don't you, Torque? It's up to you now.
It's here that Torque is forced to confront the physical manifestation of his own hatred. The same monstrous version of himself that escaped the asylum earlier in the game. This final boss fight kicks off with a showdown against Torque's own creature form. But you don't want to fight it using your own monster transformation. If you do, you're instantly killed. Instead, the smarter move is to run to a conveniently placed minigun nearby and light him up from a distance, blowing up the munitions scattered around the dock for extra damage. After that, Torque's hatred shifts into a human form, and now it's your turn to unleash your creature form and rip him apart. Just when you think it's over, Torque's hatred takes on its final form. This form looks like a massive, chained-up monster, almost like a corrupted version of Torque's own beast form. It's stitched together with pieces of other malefactors with a mini Torque dangling from its chest. 3 twisted appendages on its back launch fireballs, while a spiked halo on its head can briefly disorient you. Its only weak point is its exposed heart, and even then it can only be damaged using Killjoy's rebirth machine. You first have to lower the machine using the crane controls, then stand under it to get juiced up with its power. Hurl purple fireballs at the monster's heart until it dies, and Torque will be cured of his inner darkness. During the final fight with Torque's hatred, he's visited one last time by the ghost of his wife and children. The choices you've made throughout the game and where your morality stands determine how this moment plays out, and ultimately which ending you get. It's a fitting way to wrap up Torque's journey, since the suffering has always been about more than just monsters and gunfire. It's about guilt, conscience, and whether a man like Torque deserves redemption. In the evil ending, there's no forgiveness, just pure condemnation. Torque is berated by his family, who confirm that he murdered them all in cold blood. He beat Carmen to death, drowned Malcolm, and threw Corey out of a window. When the rescue boat shows up, the driver tries to ask what happened on the island, but Torque just transforms into his creature form, crushes the boat with a shipping crate, and kills the driver. He disappears into the island, and his family is actually relieved he's gone. It's a bleak, brutal ending. In the neutral ending, things are murkier. Corey lashes out at Torque, Malcolm isn't sure what to believe, and Carmen shows some sympathy. Here, Torque accidentally killed Carmen in a rage when she brought up divorce. Corey, unable to cope, drowned Malcolm and then took his own life. Which is honestly more goofy than tragic, as it's kind of an over-the-top reaction to seeing your dad kill your mom. When the boat arrives, Torque boards it, but after the driver mentions that the cops are waiting to haul everyone off to another prison, Torque knocks him out with his revolver and takes the boat for himself. Carmen's ghost watches him leave, quietly pitying what he's become. In the ending I got, the good ending, Torque is forgiven. His family wasn't murdered by him, they were killed during a home invasion orchestrated by the Colonel, someone from the Eastern Penitentiary who had a beef with Torque. It left me scratching my head if I'm being honest, as this is the first time that guy is ever mentioned. I'm pretty sure it was meant to be a setup for the sequel, and while I haven't played Ties That Bind yet, from what I know they ended up retconning that plot point, but I'll go over that when I cover the sequel. A rescue boat arrives and the driver not only recognizes Torque, but lets him know his prosecutor is being indicted, and he'll be getting a retrial. Torque boards the boat and sits at the front, finally calm as Carmen softly tells him she never wants to be apart from him again. Heading towards an unknown future, Torque walked away from Carnet Island a better person, and has been given a second chance at a better life.
Somebody's missing from this picture, T. I don't want us to ever be apart again. Love always, Carmen.
And that was The Suffering. Like I said at the beginning of the video, this game does a lot right. Its prison setting is pretty unique. Sure, plenty of games have featured a prison level here and there, but The Suffering is one of the rare few that builds the entire experience around that kind of environment. And it works. The island itself, with its crumbling cells, shadowy corridors, and blood-soaked history, feels like it's rotting from the inside out. That setting alone gives the game a tone all its own. And it never lets up from the moment you take control. What really caught me off guard though was how well it balances action and horror. This isn't just a mindless shooter with some spooky window dressing. There's a constant atmosphere of dread hanging over everything, and even when you're loaded up with guns and ammo, you never feel fully safe. The combat might be simple, but it's effective, and the game is smart about keeping the pressure on. It keeps you moving, keeps you nervous. The malefactors deserve a special mention. Every design tells a story directly tied to some twisted part of the island's violent past. From the firing squad marksman to the lynched newsman and the shrieking burning inferno, each one feels like a monster with a purpose. And while the game doesn't fully explain why all hell breaks loose on Carnot Island, that lingering mystery actually works in its favor. There's something unsettling about not having all the answers, and the game leans into that ambiguity in a really smart way. That's not to say it's perfect. Escorting NPCs can be a chore thanks to some clunky AI and a lack of commands, and while I actually liked a lot of the environmental puzzles, they can be a bit obtuse if you're not used to that old school action-adventure logic, but those frustrations didn't take away from the experience. What does sting though is the fact that The Suffering and its sequel are both currently delisted from digital stores. These games deserve more attention, and it's a tragedy they're not easier to access. Still, I'm holding hope they make a return, maybe through something like GOG's game preservation program. The Suffering series is just too unique to stay buried forever. And that's the video. Thanks for watching, folks. And special thanks to my channel members and patrons, including Alfred Correa, Bailey Morrison, Brad Taylor, Eric Lee, Gonkdroid the Critic, Skillfuse, SR Powa, Thunder Muffin, and Reckless Nerd. If you would like to support the channel, you could do so for as low as $3 a month, which will give you early access, ad-free videos, and occasionally uncut videos when I'm forced to censor things for YouTube. Higher tiers will land your name in the credits, or a verbal shoutout. Next video is on Dead Rising, and while I wanted to close the month with the Saboteur, I underestimated how long it is, so it'll most likely drop in the first week of July. I may or may not be able to get in another video to close out June, but I'll let you guys know. I'm planning a lot of things for summer and the rest of the year, finally getting around to Yakuza 2, probably next month. Also, I think I'll knock out Dying Light, and that PSP retrospective I mentioned a few months ago. While I'm working to get more done, I don't want to overpromise just in case something comes up, but I'm hoping I can get the monthly video count up from 2 to 3. Also, like I brought up a few weeks back, I'm going to give streaming another go, and see if I can get a handle on broadcasting on both YouTube and Twitch. I'll link my Twitch channel down below and I'll post on the community tab when I start. Again, thanks for watching, folks. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like and comment with your thoughts down below. Did you play The Suffering or its sequel? How does it hold up to similar titles? We're on the road to 100k subs and that silver plaque, so if you're new to the channel, I'd love it if you subscribed. I'm FuzzySlippers, and I'll see you later. Peace.